Okay, so I got first question, that is parameterized routing. So Chetna, we have did the parameterized routing. If I show you the code over here, just give me a second. I don't have a Studio code open here. But I will cover that again if you need how that is implemented. So this is a parameter which we implemented in the last session. So if you are not clear with this, I will cover this topic again today. That's fine. Anything else you have any questions on? Right, guys. So let's do a recap of what we did in the yesterday session. We worked with navigation and routing. So we implemented the Angular router. So just give you a small recap, and then we'll start with the session. So today we are going to usually the session for today was around implementing forms. We'll cover that in next few minutes. Okay, so let's do a recap of it. So in the yesterday session, I've showed you what is routing. So routing is a concept in which you define different URLs, and on those specific URLs, you load different content or the components. So first of all, if you are creating a project, you have to first decide that your project requires routing or not. So most of the projects which we generally work with, they always need routing. And when we create a new project, on the starting, there is a question which has been asked that, do you want to enable Angular routing? So if you feel your project requires Angular routing, you should say yes on that. If you say yes, it will create this routing file. Otherwise, it will not. Okay. If you don't have this routing file, no worry. You can create the routing file later on also. It's just a manual step. You have to create this routing component, routing module, and return from here. Now this routing file has to be used in our app module. So yesterday I showed you that there is this app routing which has been automatically added. This comes from our where is it? Somewhere over here. Yeah, here it is. So app routing file. So this enables routing in our project. Okay, now like I said, you have to configure different URLs. These URLs will be used for showing different content on the screen. So we have created components. Now these components which we created before yesterday were reusable components. So something which can be reused at multiple places. So you have a component for article callout, footer, gallery. So these are some things which can be used at different screens or different scenarios. Now, when you're creating a route, then you mean that you want to create a specific page, something which will show you information about a specific thing. Like I have a home page, so I will create a route over here and say I have a home page component. So there is no difference between a reusable component which I create in the components folder or something which I create in the screens folder. Just I want to split the files so they are more manageable. Otherwise, if I put everything in the components folder, then I have to go to the components folder to just see what screens are available. And it's not easy, like on the first time, it's not going to be easy to adapt to it. So it's better that we split that what are the screens supported and what are the reusable components. So I have a homepage component that is a reusable component, oh sorry, a screen, which is used on the in this. So yesterday I got this question a lot that if you are adding it over here, how does this automatically works? So yeah, it's an automated process. So what we are doing is we are telling, so this is a configuration. So we are telling the Angular router that these are the URLs you have to support. So I want to support a root URL, which is double quotes. That's a root URL, which will load the homepage component. I want to support news, and there is a parameter in it. So the parameter is for providing some variables into the into the URL. So this will be your category parameter. This way, you can have multiple other parameters too in the code, in the URL. So each of them will be assigned to a component. Now this configuration goes into our route in the module. The module will enable the routing on it, and the component will be automatically picked. Now, when you navigate from A page to B page or any page which you navigate, the component will be picked automatically. But where do we want to show this component? Now, that is something you have to control. So that is done through the router outlet. So in this configuration which I've done, I'm just telling that if I'm on the home page, on the root URL, load the homepage component. But where do I need to load that? So there should be some way to tell the Angular code where I want to load that homepage component. And why do we have this kind of a strange requirement that we have to tell Angular that where this component has to be loaded? It's pretty simple, because every project is different, and everyone implementing the project, even the same kind of a project, will have a different type of HTML. So maybe you are very comfortable writing code in Bootstrap, so you will have a different HTML structure. If I'm comfortable in writing material design or any other kind of a UI library, my HTML structure will be different based on my understanding of how I want to create the HTML. So Angular cannot automatically decide where it has to load the component. You have to tell that okay, this is the place where you have to load the component, and we do it through a directive which is called as router outlet. So we place this. This is a placeholder that when the router starts, it picks the component based on the URL and brings the component at this location. So it will automatically replace the content of router outlet with the component. How? Because it's a directive. So directives can be used for, remember we know that directives can be used for adding content on the screen. So it's a kind of a structural directive which changes the content on the screen by adding that component over here. So now the component is loaded, and we will see that component on our screen. Let's start the project. It's not running, so we'll say npm start. Okay, started. We'll go over here. Okay, so I got a question. Should router outlet be placed in a specific location? Yes. So it's up to you. Not, I cannot decide where it has to be. So it's up to your project where you want to control it. So ideally, your router outlet is a placeholder which will load the main content of application. So see, any application you open, like let's go to Amazon, let's go to Flipkart, any application which you open, it will always have a very standard way. So if you go to open Amazon, Amazon will show you that okay, there is a header and there is a navigation, then there is a gallery component, and then some boxes to show different sales going on. If you go to Flipkart, it will have the same header, same kind of it, not the same, but yeah, same kind of a header, some navigation links, and a gallery. Now, when you navigate from one page to another, so let's say I want to buy groceries. If I go to groceries, you will see that the header is kind of same and the main content area changed over here. So let's put in a pin code over here. Okay, so you can see there is a header and the content area change. So when I click on this bottle, so again you can see the header is same but the content area change. So you have to decide that where is the main content area which will change between different pages. So in my code also, if you see this part, I have the header and the navigation on the page that is required for all the pages, and I also need the footer, but the main content area which is in between is controlled through the router outlet, so that if I navigate from A page to B page, I will still have the same header and footer, but the content area will be controlled by the router outlet. Okay, is it clear? So that's the same thing which is happening in our application too. So if you go to the home page, we see this content area for gallery and all. go to sports, and you can see the header and the footer are same. There is this footer works text over here, but this content is updated. Okay, so that's our router outlet. Now we have learned also about parametric routes. So parametric routes are configured by writing a colon symbol in front of the path. So you can have n number of parametric routes and n number of parameters in them also. So you can say slash one parameter. So I can just name them anything. So parameter 1, 2, 3, like I can have n number of parameters. But the problem is controlling these n number of parameters will be very complicated. The reason is, for an Angular project, let's say, I will show you one scenario, and I will say over here user ID. Okay, and again I will keep another path, and in this one, instead of category, I will say location and user ID. So are these two URLs same? Okay, just a question. Do you feel these two URLs are same? Yep. So yes, but based on the parameter also, you can see the parameters say that, okay, this is, so when we generally see these kind of URLs, the simple mindset would be that okay, I have news, but I have an entity over here which is a type of category, and then I'm looking for user ID. Okay, this is what a developer will understand by looking at this first. This is a very common confusion we have, that you will say, okay, news, but it's look for category, and the category will look for user ID in it. And this one is for news based on a location for a particular user ID. No. So for Angular, these two URLs are completely same, because Angular code cannot identify what type of entity it is. So if you have category or location or category, it will be the same thing. So even if I write something like this, it's the same thing for Angular, because it does not understand what kind of parameters you are passing based on their type of entities, that what kind of a value it is. So if you have this kind of a URL, this URL will never be called. It will always call this first URL, because that's the most nearest matching URL. Because when the code runs, it starts from the top. So it will say, okay, is it the root URL? No, it's not the root URL. Then moves to the next line. It will say, okay, is it matching? So in our case, if a URL looks like this, news slash Delhi slash user ID is kind of a number, in this case, this will automatically go to this part. Why? Because it has news in it. Yes, it has news in it. The second value is a parameter. Okay, that's fine. And the third value is also a parameter. So perfectly matches with our schema. And Angular code will always take the user to this URL. Even if you write another URL over here and say path news Delhi, and then a parameter over here like a user ID. Even in this case, it will never come to the URL over here, because it's always going to see, okay, the first one says it has news, second is a parameter, third is a parameter. So this is the perfect URL schema, and run the code for this component. So you have to be very careful that when you're structuring the list of URLs which you want to support, they should have some uniqueness across the URLs, because Angular will not differ will not be able to differentiate the URLs based on what parameters you have. Okay, so in this case, like if I want to handle a specific scenario like this, what I will do is I will say all the URLs for Delhi should be marked on the top. In that case, if the URL says news slash Delhi slash user ID, this will be called. But if the URL changes to Delhi slash sorry, from news slash Haryana slash a user ID, then this URL will not be called and it will automatically go to this section, right? So you have to be, you should actually first run all the scenarios, see, and try to find out these kind of overrides which are happening in the URLs. All right, so we have our URLs configured. Let me do one thing. Let me revert the code. Otherwise, our application will stop working. Yeah, I think that's correct. Now, these parameters are going to be received in your component. They will be received by using a service. So you can go to the, you can receive them in any component. It can be your direct screen component, which is this one, or any other component which is nested. So you can go to this component and you can use the activated route service. So on the activated route, you will get parameters, sorry, a params property. This params property will be observable and you have to observe on this property to find what are the parameters you have. So I'm just observing on it and getting the categories from it. Now, once you have the data, like what parameters have been passed, you may have to call a API to get the data for that particular scenario. So we'll just write the service inside this subscribe and say make a API call and get the data for that. Okay, so this makes the API call to the news, passing the category along with it, gets the data, filters it. If there is an error, it navigates the user to the error page also. So one thing you can do is this request is being handled. You just test it out. You can just fail the API. So instead of sending the API request to this URL, just make a typo in it, and it should fail like this. I just write a wrong URL. It will fail and take me to the not found page. So if I click on sports, it first tries to load the sports data. If it's not available, so it will take me to the error screen. So this is a good practice so that the users don't see these kind of network errors or errors which are happening in the request. They are just taken to the kind of a not found screen or error screen, and you can give more instructions that what to be done in this case. Okay, if everything goes good, you can just click on the sports and or any other link, and the data will be loaded for that. Okay, so is it clear with everyone now what we did in the yesterday session? Great. Okay, so now today we're going to implement forms. So there are two types of forms in Angular. So you can just look for forms module in Angular. Okay, so Angular supports two types of different forms. So there is the forms module, which we already have implemented in our code. And now you will say, like, when did we implement that? Because we never wrote a code for a form. So where did we implement that? So we implemented the forms module when we were trying to use the ng model. So ng model, that ng model directive will only work if you have the support for the forms module in your project. So that's why we added this forms module. So now these forms which we are going to create using the forms module, they are also called as template driven forms. Why template driven forms? Because the main business logic of validations, how to get the data or do any kind of a custom logic in them, it's implemented at the template level. So in your HTML, you will define all the data modeling, you will define all the validations which are required in a form when you are using the forms module or the template driven form. Okay, second is your reactive forms. So reactive forms module is a different way. So the forms module is template driven. The reactive forms is called as a model driven form. So in a reactive form, the main business logic is implemented in the TS file. In the TS file, we'll define all the validations, we'll define all the business logic, the modeling for the data, everything will be done in the TS file. Now, the next question should be like, okay, what to use? Like we have two types of forms, when to use what? So forms module or the template driven forms should be used on simpler forms. Like you are creating a login form, which has two controls in it, like email address and a password. So it's a very simple form. You should try to implement using the forms module. But you are implementing a multi-screen checkout flow. Like if you go to Amazon, Amazon has like multiple screen options. You have to provide credit card information, you have to provide your address, then you have to provide what kind of discount coupons you want to add. All of those things are involved in a multi-step form. Or sometimes we work with forms where you will have a plus icon, and you click on the plus icon, it will add new controls into the form. So these are called as complex forms. In these complex form requirements, we use reactive forms for implementing them, because they are much more easier to implement them in reactive forms. Okay, so anything which is complex, more than 2 or 3 fields, I will try to implement that using reactive forms. Anything which is simple, like a login form or a registration form which has few controls in it, that is should be done through a forms module. Now you can there is an like you can think of like why we have to think like this, like something complex or a reactive form. Are they not same as in the capabilities? The capabilities of reactive forms and forms module are same. They can implement any kind of a form. It's just the simplicity which reactive forms provides you in complex scenarios, and the simplicity which your template driven forms provides you in basic scenarios. So that's the only reason I prefer to use this in specific scenarios. So first we'll try the simplest one, which is the forms module with a login form which you want to implement. Okay, so how do we create a login form first? So I will clear this and open a new terminal. So for creating a form, I have to create a component. Before I create a component, I have to see that it has to be a screen. So I will first create nggc screens, and over here I'm going to say login page. Okay, so a new screen is added for the login page. In this, I'm going to create my login form. Okay, so I will send you the command. You can run this and create the component on your system too. Now let's go to the component HTML file, the login component HTML file, and we want to implement a login form. So I am not going to write the HTML. I will just pick some snippet for it. So we'll go to Bootstrap. They have a lot of example code, and I think they already have example code for a login also. So here it is. So this is the login screen which they provide. So what we'll do is we'll take their form syntax. Actually, we'll take this whole form syntax from here. So we'll say add HTML, copy here, this whole thing from here to here. And do we need any CSS or something? I think no. So that's good. And that's our form. They have one small CSS code which I remember we have to add. Yep. So there is this signing.css which we have to use. So we'll just copy the CSS from here and add that into our template. Oh, sorry, in the CSS file. Okay, so that's our complete code for login page. Okay, so I will send you this. So this is the HTML and this is the CSS which I'm sending now. Now once this has been added over here, we have to take the name of the component. It's called as Edureka, sorry, login page component, and we have to go to the app routing. In this, I will create a new route. Let's say path. Path would be login component and the login page component. So we'll import the login page component over here. Sorry, here it is, the login page component. Okay, so the component is added. Now let's navigate to the login page. So we'll go to this and say /login, and I can see the login form implemented over here. Simple. Okay, now on this I can fill in some information and submit this form. Sorry, 1 second, let me close this. Okay, so now how do we implement the form in it? So we'll go to the login page component, and over here we have to define some variables in the template by using the hash keyword. So well, here I'm going to call this as login form equal to ng form over here. Okay, so that's fine. We'll now have to configure our controls which we have. So on these controls, I have to say square bracket, round brackets, ng model. Okay, and what is the model I want to use? So I have to go to the TS file and I will create a variable over here. I'll call it as forms. Sorry, we'll call it as login form. And it will have two values in it, email, which is going to be an empty string, and password, which is going to be an empty string. So these are the two values which I want to receive from the form. So we'll go back to HTML, and over here I'm going to say login form dot email, and for the password we'll do the same thing. So we'll go over here and write password. Okay, so that's done. Now we have to set up the validation rules for everything in this. Okay, so I'm getting an error. Why? Okay, let's see. No directive found for export as ng form. That's strange. Login form over here. Okay, we'll fix this. I have to do event binding on it. So when you submit this form, you have to bind a ng submit over here, and write the event handler to call the submit method. So that will be done in our TS code. So here I will create login, and this method will be called once I log in into it. Oh yeah, so my mistake over here. I haven't seen this quickly. It's actually over here. So not on the main, but on the form you have to add this. So sorry, that's my bad. Okay, so you have login form added over here. Now my code will start giving error that it's not able to find the right relation over here. So one thing which is going to create a problem, that I'm using the template name as a login form, and in the TS code also there is a login form property. So that will give be conflict. So what I will do is in the TS code I'll just change it to form, And over here, I'm just going to write form over here like this. So just to go with this problem. Now, once this is done, we have to define the form controls on these. So let's implement the controls. So first of all, I have to write the name property on them. So they don't have name property. So I'll write a name on these controls. So I'll write name. This is going to be my password control. And this is going to be my email control. So I have to write name on them. This is email. And then we're going to write a new template variable over here, and we'll call this as email. And the type of this is going to be ng model. And this one also is going to be password. And the type of this is going to be ng model like this. Okay, so email. So these are the changes. So in the previous sessions, we never wrote the name and the ng model template variable on it. But in this case, we have to do when we are finally completing a proper form using the forms module. So what we did is, first of all, we have to define a template variable on the form, assign it with the type of ng form. Okay, implemented ng submit. When you're submitting the form, what should be called? Then you have the name on the variable, or sorry, on the control. So you have to write name, then create a variable on it, assign it as ng model, then use ng model and assign form dot email. So the form dot email is the variable which is going to receive the values in your template, in your TS code. So this has to be done for the model over here and here. And at the last, I also have remember me. So I will also write it for remember me over here. Okay, so we'll say ng remember me equal to ng model, and ng model equal to going form dot remember. Okay, so the form dot remember is not there, so we'll create remember equal to false. So that's the default value which we have. Okay, so yep, so I got a question why we use login form and what is ng form. So login form over here is a template variable. So in your template also you can create variables to access this control which we have, and the type of that is ng form. So it's a form type of a element which we are using. I will show you that what is the use of that, but in a while. But first, let's set this up and see if our form works properly. Yep, it works fine. And when I click on the submit, let's test one thing. When I click on submit, it should print console.log and this dot forms value. So whatever is in the form, it should print over here. So let's run this code, type in something and say remember, and yeah, you can see this is the content which I've filled in the form. So that's the email address, password, and the remember is checked in. That's true, which has been received. Okay, so this way I can read the values. Now I have to send these values to the API. We'll send that later. But yeah, so try this out on your system, set this up, and then we'll continue. This is the TS code, and the last is the CSS code. So maybe 5 minutes, try this out. If you have any questions on it, let me know. We are just doing the basic setup right now, so nothing advanced right now. It's just a setup for the login form. Everyone, so let's continue. So we have implemented our form, and now when I do a submit, I need to send a request to the server. So how do we send a request to the server? So that same, we have to send a request using the services, and we have to implement an API for that. So here I will go to our services. We have a user service. In this user service, it's not implemented, so we'll implement a new method over here. We'll say I want to use a public method which is going to be for login. So I'll say login method is going to be implemented over here. It's going to receive the information that who is this person. Now we want to log in. So for that, we'll create an interface. So actually we can go to the user and we can write an interface for it. Export default, no, not default, actually export interface. We'll call it as login. And we're going to pass an email address, type of string, password, type of password, and remember it's going to be a Boolean value. Okay, and we're going to use this interface over here. So we're going to receive form. The form will implement the login interface, and we are going to write a HTTP request over here. So we're going to say HTTP.post because I want to send data. So I will be using the post method. Okay, and what is the URL which I want to send the request to? Do we have that URL? We can get the URL from our config. So we'll just go to our config service and create a login URL over here. So I'm going to say login, and this is our base API URL. So we'll just copy this and say it's going to be login over here. Okay, so we have the URL also. So we'll use this dot config dot urls dot login URL. And when you are sending a post request, you have to send a body, means what content you want to post. So that will be my form data which I'm sending from here, and this will give me a subscribe. I can subscribe to the data and receive the information over here. Okay, so till this we are done. Now our API which we implemented, it doesn't support the login flow. So I don't have a login scenario to be handled in it. So we have to add some kind of a mock API which helps us in login, and we can complete this flow. So what we do is we'll go to JSON server. In JSON server, there is a different package, additional package along with it, which is called as JSON server auth. This adds support for authentication. So it creates a JSON web token and allows me to send some detail, store the details about the user in the system, and returns me a JSON web token. So how do we install this? We'll just run these commands and install this in our project. So here, run this command that will install JSON server and JSON server auth. In your database file, which we have already created in the previous sessions, and that is called as let's see what we call it as. So in the it's called as db.json. In the db.json, make sure you have a user's key, and the user's key's value is a array. So it can be an empty array. Just make sure it is an array like this. If it is there, then all good. Otherwise, you should add a user's array in it. Okay. So I will do one thing. I will send you this file, or you can check this file from GitHub. Okay. Once that is done, then you have to go to the JSON server change in the package.json file. So in the package.json file, where we have this, you have to add support for the middleware. So this is the JSON server auth middleware which we added. This is a plugin which we have to run along with JSON server. So that has to be added over here. Okay, so that's done. Here, dev command, dev server command will look like this. Okay, so once this is done, we can run the server. We can say run dev server, and that runs our dev server and shows up that there is a user's API which is running. Okay, so it doesn't shows that there is a login API or register API. That's fine. We don't have to worry about that because the JSON server automatically provides us register, sign up, and the users API, and a login and a sign in API. So we already have a login API now. Okay, so now we have to try this to log in into the system. So what I will do is I will pass in some URL, or sorry, email address, some password, and say remember me. Let's go to the network tab and see what does it do. So does it send a request? No, no request is sent. We get the details over here. Yeah, so it's not sending the request. Why? Sorry, I think I didn't wrote the code for sending the request in this file. Yeah, so I didn't wrote that. So here I have to import the user service. I'll say private user from the user service, and on this we're going to write this dot user dot login and pass in the form information we have. Okay, so the form's complete form content will be passed into this, and then let's try this out. So refresh. All good. Let's wait for it to run this page. Yeah, so the page is loaded. Now let's put in some data into it. Password, remember me, yes. Network, and click on sign in. Now you can see it sends a request to the API and we got a response over here. So we got a response that is 404 and the request is sent to the right URL. So I didn't get any valid response back. The reason is why this is happening, like why I'm getting 404, although this request is working fine, I'm getting 404 over here because there is no user in the db.json file. If you go to the db.json file, there is a user section. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. So there is no user added right now. So I'm just trying to log in into the system which has no users in it. So that's why I'm getting this 404. So not to worry about it. This API is kind of working correct. But the thing is, if I'm not able to log in, I have to show some message to the user. So we can simply write a logic over here in the login page that if there is an error, we catch that error and show some error warning to the users. Over here, you can write pipe in the pipe. We're going to write catch error, and we're going to catch the error which we have. Okay, we're going to get error. We're going to return error from here, and we're going to also change a property on the page. We'll call it as server error because this is coming from a server. So we'll say it's a server error. Okay, which is going to be a string value. Right, and we'll assign this value over here. This server error while logging. Okay, like this. Okay, right, so that's our error which will show up. I'm getting the error on the pipe. Yep, that's correct because there is nothing returned from this code. So we'll return from here and we'll implement the subscribe in this code only over here. Okay, so let's try the flow again. I will get the server error. I will print the server error somewhere on the page. Over here, we can say p tag. If there is a server error, by writing ngif on it. So ngif if error dot length is greater than 0, so it has it has characters in it. So by default it's an empty string. If it has characters in it, just print that server error also over here. So let's run the code. Let's wait for it to load. Okay, so pass it some details and send the network request. Okay, network request sent, and we got an error over here. Yep, and we can see it says error while login. So that's the error which we print on the screen. Now it will tell the user that, okay, yeah, there is some error while logging into the system. Okay, so our login flow, we are able to capture the data. We are able to send the data to the API. The API is returning an error to us, and we are able to show the error warning on the screen. Okay, so any questions till now? Okay, so guys haven't got any questions, so I think we're good. Okay, so that prints the error message on the top. So I will send you this code. Try this out. Again, I will send you all the files which I have. And then we'll continue. Okay, so I got a message. My login URL is not redirecting to login component. So we have to set that up in the routing. So yeah, to set it like this. Okay, so in the configuration service, this is how I've added the login file, the router net. Okay, so I got a few questions from Sheikh. Let's go through them. Yeah, I will commit this code also. 1 second. Okay, so let's go through the questions which I got. The first one is why do we need email in the template? That is this hash email. I haven't covered the use case of it. We'll cover that at the last. That's not something that is something which we need for validation. We'll cover that at the last. Next is why do we need ng model? So ng model is for two-way data binding, so that we get the value of this particular control and make it available in the TS file. Okay, so that's the reason for it. Why do we create it for from form in variable? So the template we have, okay, the template which we have in the HTML file, that's the template. That is something the user sees. and the TS code is the place where you write your business logic. Okay, so if you want to send some value from your template to the TS logic, the TypeScript code, you have to create two-way data binding. Okay, for that we have to create ng model, so that whatever I'm typing in the HTML, that should be available in the TS code, and the TS code can send that to the API to check if the user is logged in or not, or it's a correct user or not. Okay, so I already told you that email is something which we haven't covered yet. This hash email is something which we need for validations. We are not covering right now. It's just something we have to add, otherwise the form will give errors in this case. So if I remove this, the form will start giving errors. So it's better to add it, and I will cover that in detail once we need that in our application. Okay, so we need that right now. Just say that, okay, it's required. Okay, I think that's the last question you have. Guys, any other questions? Okay, so please try this out. I'll give you 5 minutes. Try this and see if your API call has been sent, and your output should show some error message on the top over here, like this. Okay, so error while login, this kind of a message should show on your screen when you submit. Okay, so once it's done, then we'll implement a registration form where the user can register themselves, and that registration data will be used in the login form to log in the user and do different flows in it. Okay, so I'll give you 5 minutes, then we'll continue. Everyone, so let's continue and implement the registration form. Okay, so this is a login form, kind of it's complete. We have seen how a form is implemented. The things which we haven't covered is implementing validations in it. I will show you the validations because we have a dedicated session in the next week of implementing validations and custom validations. I will show you basic validations later on, that how they are done, and custom ones we are going to do in the next session in the next week. Okay, so let's wrap up the forms module. So this is how the forms module works. Now we have to use a reactive form to implement the register form. Okay, so this will give you an idea that how a reactive form also is implemented. I hope everybody is clear with till now that how the forms module and the form is set up. And now you're going to work with a reactive form. So for a reactive form, you have to make sure you have the reactive forms module imported in the app module file, and you have imported that into the module imports. Okay, if you don't have this, the reactive form will not work. So make sure this is added. Now let's open a new terminal and create the registration form. So we'll run the command register page. Okay, that's the command which you want to run. ngc, so ngGC screens and register page. So let's create this, and that is done. And close the app module. In the screens, you will find a register page over here. Perfect. So let's implement the register page. So reactive forms are also called as model driven forms. So what you have to do is we have to define the logic first in our TS file. So in the forms module, the template driven form which we implemented for login, I started directly with the template file and then moved the submission logic in the TS code. But when we are working with the reactive form, you start with your TS file. You have to write the model details, how the model will be set up, and you have to implement that in your, then you work with the TS, the HTML code. So first step over here would be, I have to create a model. So that will be my form model, that what I am implementing. So over here, I will say form equal to, so you can create form, you can create register form, whatever you like. So I can say register form equal to form group. And the form group is going to be available from Angular Forms. Now in this form group, you have to define what controls do you need in your form. So I will need different controls in it. And we have to write new, 1 second, like this, sorry. Yeah, so new form. What controls I need? First would be my name. So I will pass in a first name. First name will be added. So that will be a form control. Let's say it's a control which I'm creating. I will pass the control. Any default value. So if I want to pass a default value to it, I will write it over here. Otherwise, I will write an empty string. Yes, so this is a reactive form. So we already have seen how a forms module work. Now this is a reactive form. Okay. Second would be my last name. Okay. Then we have to define the email address. So let's say email. It's an empty string. My password, when I'm registering, I want to pass a password to it. Okay, so what will be the password? That's also going to be a form control. So we'll say control over here. Okay, and we'll also add a another one which is for the phone number. let's do one thing. Let's pick address over here. Okay, so you can define a complex form also. Like you can say the address is here. In the address is also going to be a new form group, and in this form group you can have further items in it. So I can ask city, which city this address is from. So I can write form control this, and you can ask for the pin code of the user. Okay, so in this way you can design that what kind of data this form will return. So this form will return me a data similar to this. I'll write it over here. It's going to be object which has first name. Okay, it will have last name in it, email address, password, address. Address is going to be object. Why? Because I've assigned address as a group. So if you assign anything as a group, it creates a object for it. And over here in this, it will have a city. City is going to be a string, and then again you have a pin code, which is going to be over here. Okay, so that's the postal code, city, address, object. This is the form of data which we are going to receive. So your first step in a reactive form is to define what data you want to receive from the form. Okay, we have defined the model. Now we have to relate this model with the template. So it has to fill in the values. Like we have to do the mapping of the template with the form model over here. How do we do that? First of all, I have to create the form in my application. So I will go to the register form and bring in code over here. So here, this is going to call please register. This is going to be register. So I'm using the same template which I used for the login. I'm just going to make changes into it. So that's it. Here it's going to call the register method. We don't have a register method, so let's create one. That's done. So what else? In a reactive form, we don't need model, we don't need name, and this whole thing is not required. So these three attributes which we have defined, they are not required in this. So we'll remove this, and checkbox, remember me, and the ng model. So you are not supposed to use ng model in a reactive form. Okay, so now that's the basic cleanup. Over here, we'll say this is the register button, and looks fine. Let's run this code. Let's see if it loads up properly. So in this, here I will say register, and we'll call register page component like this. Okay, right now I'm on the login, so I'll go to register. Let's see what do we have on the register page. Yep, so on the register page, I can see it has email address and password. So it's a different form now which I'm creating. So you can see it says please register, email address and password. I have to add all the other controls which are required. So what controls are required? I need the user's first name, the last name, the email address, password, and address and city. Sorry, city and pin code. So over here, let's say first name, last name, email, password. Then we have to add city and pin code. So this will be the controls which we need. So first one, this will be a type of text. Let me set this up. Okay, so we'll say first name, last name, email address, password. city, pin code, like this. Okay, let's see if the page works fine. Okay, so the controls are here, perfect. We don't need the remember me because we are registering over here, so we don't need this to remember. Okay, so that's our register form, which the HTML has been created. Now, the HTML is created. Now we have to map the model with the form. So how do we implement the modeling? So what we do is, first of all, I don't even need this on the top. Okay, and we'll say we are going to use few different directives. So here I'm going to say this is a form group, and what is the name of the form group which we have? So that is the register form. Okay. Now for each of the control, instead of using ng model, we use form control name. So which control it is? So this is the first name control. Okay. So the first name control, you have to be very careful. You have to use the same names which you have added over here. So that's called as first name. So I will use first name as a control name. Second one is here last name. So here we're going to write last name. This one is for, sorry, form control name. This is for email. So write email, form control name. This is for your password. Okay, then we have city and pin code. So now that's a little different. Why? Because if you go back to the code, you can see first I've defined a form group, and in the form group I've defined city and pin code. So I have to follow the same thing in my HTML also. So over here, what I will do is I have to create a control which I have to create an element which will be treated as our form group. So what I will do is I will wrap this with a div tag. Okay, and on this I'm going to say form group. Which form group it is? It's a form group name. That is going to be address, and then the address has city in it, so we'll write form control city and pin code. So here I'm going to write city and pin code over here. So that creates the relations between your template and your TS code. Okay, so that's done. Let me do a small cleanup over here. It's not required. Okay, looks good. So let's run this. And yeah, so I have the form here. And in the register method, what I will do is I'll write console.log and print this dot register form. So print all the values which you have in the register form. Okay, so let's try this out. So in the console, I should get some value over here. Submit this, and I got a form group because what we have is this dot register form is a form group. Okay, so I got a console.log which says it's a form group. In the form group, I will receive the controls in it. So what controls are created? So you have a control for password, last name, first name, email, and address. The address is again a form group which has two controls in it, which is city and pin code. All of them are available, and you will scroll down and there will be a value section also. So this will give you the values which have been typed into the form. So I have typed in address, that is this one. Email address, password, last name, first name, all of them are been captured over here, and it follows the same structure of how you have defined the model. So it will match the model for you and provide you the value based on it. Okay, so now what I can do is I can send this data to an API and register the user. So how do we send this? Same, we implement the user service over here. So I'll say user and use the user service. In the user service, you're going to create a new method. We'll say public register. It's going to receive a form, and we should create a register form over here as an interface, and we'll call the HTTP API over here. So I'll say return this dot HTTP dot post because I want to post data. So I'll write this dot post and what URL I want to send the request to. So that's going to be this dot config dot URLs. Okay, and I don't have a register URL, so I will create a new URL over here. I will say register and we'll write register over here. Okay, we'll come back to the service, and over here I'm going to say register. What data I want to pass in is the form data which I'm going to receive. I will be passing that into this code. So I don't have this register form interface also, so we'll implement that. So here I'm going to say export interface register form, which needs first name, as string, okay, 6 controls are there, last name, email, password, city, and pin code. Okay, so that's defined. Okay, and we're going to use this in our TS code. Okay, so we've used the interface. Now no error on this code. Okay, so it looks good. Now I can send a request to the server and make sure things are the user gets created. So the API is responsible for creating the user. It's not our control. It's the API which will receive the request and create the things in the database level. So here, let's type in the details. So let's say ABC is the user's name. Last name is DEF. Email address is abc@def.com. Password is 1234567 City is Delhi, and pin code is this. Okay, so let's see if the network request goes. Okay, so got the form group, but the network request didn't work. Okay, let's see why. Because what I think is what's happening in the TS code, I am not using the request. So I have to write this dot user dot register, pass in the form. So on the register form, you have register form is actually a form group. So you don't have to pass in the form group. You have to pass in the form group's values in it. So you'll get value from it, and that is what you have to pass in this code. Right. Okay, so sometimes what happens is when you have a value, like this value has no data defined, like data type defined for it, and now you will start getting errors that there is no data type defined for it, and you want to override or you want to typecast the value. So you can say I want to typecast is as like I want to change it to the register form interface. So you can write as register form interface. So whatever the value we have over here, the type of that is going to be assigned as register form. So this is a way to override any value any type of a value in this case. Okay, so it's overriding the type of it only. Now when I run this code, say ABC, let's wait for the form to load. ABC DEF, ABC at def.com, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, Delhi, and this is the pin code. Send the request and check the network tab. Any request which are sent, send it again. Nope, not sending the request. Yeah, the reason is I didn't add subscribe. So without adding the subscribe, the request will not work. So I have to subscribe to the request. Now let's do the same thing. Let's wait for the code to load. First name, last name, register, and now you can see it sends a request to the API and sets sends a request, and now we can see what are we getting from this request. So it says it sends a request but doesn't returns any information. So why is it not found? Okay, so something wrong with the API. It receives a request for register. Okay. Yeah, now it's working. I think I just had to restart the server. Now, once the record has been stored, you can see the new record will be stored. So go to your db.json file, and in the user section, you will find that a new record has been added into it. So that's the user which has been newly added into the system. The email address is this. Password gets hashed. So this is an automatic mechanism. The API automatically hashes the password, stores the first name, last name, address of the user, and all of this information is stored. Now once this information gets stored, you can use the same API to log in also. Now if I say I want to go to login, go to the login page, wait for the login page to load. You're on the login page. Now I will use the same details, abc at def.com, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Okay, I will send a request to this API. The API will respond back, responded back with a payload over here. So what is this payload? And the payload is your user information, that what user you are right now, and it also has a JSON web token. So JSON web token is for authenticating the user, that is it the right user or not. So this is a signature which will be created by your API, and this has to be used for validating that the user permissions are correct or not. Okay, so this permission check is not done on the client side, it is always done on the server side. The only thing which we do is we store this JSON web token in our client side code. In our Angular code, we'll store this somewhere in our browser, and whenever we send a request to the server, we also send this JSON web token with the request. Okay, So we'll cover that in the later session in the next week. There is a dedicated session on JSON Web Tokens, how to implement them. But yeah, for us, we need to know that, okay, a JSON Web Token is created. We have to store this on our client side once the login is done. All right, so you can try out the register form and see how the code is implemented in it. So in the CSS, there is no change. In the HTML, you have to write this. In the model, you have to write this. Okay, so any questions on implementing a reactive form? Okay, so I got a question. My understanding is as we attach the module to the form in reactive forms option, we attach module to the form in the reactive. So even if you are using reactive forms or the template driven forms, whatever forms you are implementing, you still need to attach their modules to the app module file. Okay, so forms module or reactive forms module, they both have to be attached in the template in the app module file. So that's one thing. Now in your template driven form, you implement the main logic in your template. So you write all the bindings, everything at the template level. So main difference is in your template driven form, even your logic of validations, how validations are implemented, they are done, they are implemented using template code by implementing different directives in it. In a reactive form, the complete logic is implemented using the TS code. So you can see over here, the most of the code which I've written is in the TS code, that how the model will be implemented. All the validations which I need to implement on these controls will be done in the TS code only. And in the HTML, I will just have that what controls these are, and I want to implement them. So that's the one difference. In template driven form, we use ng model. Okay. In reactive forms, we are not going to use ng model. So that's one more thing which you have to consider in this case. Okay, so try this out and then we'll continue. I'll give you 10 minutes for this, then we'll continue with the session. Hi everyone. So I got a few questions. First one is how you added auth card. So auth card is implemented using the command which is nggg, and what auth card you want to implement. Okay, I'll send you the command for it. One second. Okay, next is which one is better, reactive or template for large components? So reactive form is much better if you're working on a large component. Okay, login form is not working. Please help me. Okay, I will look into it. I assume the reactive form may be more popular in Angular development, correct? Yes, because it gives you much better control of the how you implement things, and that's something which every developer want to have in their project. So yeah, reactive forms is much better in this case. So Puna, I sent you the command for creating the auth card. You can check that. Okay. So Sheikh, what is your question? What's happening in your login form? Okay, so have you copied the code which I have sent in the chat or in the GitHub? Can you do a screen share? Hello.
Hi, Praveen. So this is the login page. The same code I copied of ng model, and in TS also I copied the code where I'm doing this catch error and error while logging in, and the same server error I added in the HTML page too. The server error. So now I think my code. Okay. So when I run this, I'm able to do this 1, 2, 3, 4. But when I click on login, the login button is I'm unable to do so.
Click on network. Okay, go back to the HTML.
And this is the HTML.
So you have the login method. Yeah. So go to TS file now. Okay.
So this is not hitting.
Can you scroll up?
Maybe.
Can you scroll up? Okay, let's go back to the browser. Let's see what's happening.
So this login, actually I'm not getting. Console log also not coming. I added the console. So this is not hitting.
So okay, yeah. Let's. Why is it not hitting? Click on.
So
Yeah, go
I
back to the.
validated the ng submit also the same. I mean camel case is also copied.
So okay, go back to the browser. Refresh this page. Go to console first and refresh this page.
So
No, in your browser only, the browser console. Okay, now submit this form, like put in some details in it. Okay, strange. Okay, let's debug your code. Go to the HTML. You have button over here. Button is inside the form, which is type of submit. You click on the button. You have a login. Okay, the login method will be called on submit. Correct. Wait one second. Which page you are showing me and which page you are working with? Because the page which you're showing me, this HTML,
Is login page component.
okay,
Here also I'm going to see.
okay. So the login page which you have right now, wait. The login page which you have, it has this HTML, like you type in it, it shows these text in it.
I didn't understand it.
Type in the control, type in the input box. You see, it shows these text below over here.
Yes.
Okay, now go to the component which you are working with.
So this is the component.
No, wait, it is not the same component.
Oh, okay.
It in the HTML, do you see that text printed over there? The logic for printing that text.
Yes. Maybe the old one. Maybe I'm referring to.
Yeah, so fix that. Then you can check that out.
Sure.
In the routing, you're using the login form page. You have to use login form component. You have to use login page component. Again, login page component. Now try it. Okay, guys. So any questions on the reactive form?
Reactive, actually, I haven't started it. I need to do it. I'll do it now and I'll see.
Okay. Hey guys, any questions on the reactive form? Is it clear how a reactive form is different from a template-driven form? Okay, so one more scenario which I want to cover on the reactive forms is that I have this address section, which allows me to provide address information, my address information, like which city or which city and which pin code I am in. So what I want to do is this address information which I have, one second. Yeah, this address information which I have, I want to create it as an array. So instead of providing only one address, maybe I have like a address in Haryana, I have address in Bangalore, and I have address in Mumbai, and I want to use those addresses also in it. Or maybe I have like n number of addresses which I want to add into the system. So what I want is this city and pin code should be an array, and it allows me to pick multiple items as per my requirement. So if I want to add 2 addresses, 3 addresses, the form should automatically grow and allow me to fill those details. Okay, so we'll cover that. That is called as a reactive form uh, with a form array which we are going to create. Okay, so we'll do that. Let's take a small break for 10 minutes and then we'll come back and implement the form array in this. Okay, so I will set up the timer over here. Let's take a break and sorry. I'm getting error in register template. Can you please check? Sure. Chetan, I will send you the request for screen share. Okay, I think I got this error, like why it was happening. This is the reason. Let's see if it works with the fix now. Right. Okay, still not working. Okay, still not working. Okay, why? Just give me a minute. Let me check. Okay, so now it's working. The reason was I have to write the group name in square brackets and assign I as a value to it. So what's happening is I'm defining that, okay, I will be having an array. Iterate the array, create multiple elements. So each of the item over here is one of the index. So I is the index. So if I have only one item, the first item in the array will have these two controls in it. And what are the values for those two controls? So I have to pass in those. So it creates a list of items when you see the data structure now. So the form is implemented like this. So these are the four values. Then you have the address, and the address is over here. So this way you can receive information as a array and even make it form dynamic to show or add more controls in it. So I can say there is address 1, address 2. So I can, instead of this, I can write +1. So that will show what is my first address, what is my second address over here. You can see over here now. I can say my address is ABC. Sorry, the username is ABC DEF ABC at abc.com 1234 and put in the details for the address. I can say another address and pin code, another address and a pin code. So this way I can pass in multiple items in it. Now, when this is sent to the API will store all of these, and you can see in the db.json file that this whole data is stored. So now storing in the API is something which your backend team will be doing. It's not something which we are going to control. It's up to them how they are storing these records and maintaining them. So even what data you have to send, you can shape in a you have to shape it in a form that how your backend team is going to accept that. So this the shaping of the data is done through the model, that what keys you want, you will structure their model according to it, and then send the data to the API. Okay, any questions on this? I will send you this code. It's very simple, just one few lines of code change which you have to do. So this is the HTML. The new thing which we covered is also the getter method. So if you want to access any control in your reactive forms template, you have to create a get method like this. So you'll write get the property name which you want to get and what is the value of it. So the value is going to be from the register form. I want to get the address as a form array. So that why I'm assigning it as a form array, because I want to receive the value as a form array so that I can run different scenarios in my template. If I don't receive it as a form array, my template will start giving me error that what kind of value you are receiving and why do you want to implement some checks on logic on it. So if I don't receive it as a form array, the template will start giving errors that what is it. So how can you get controls from it if you don't know the type of it? Okay, so that's why I have to say form array. Okay, so try this out. This is your TS code. I'm sending it to all. And this is your HTML change which we did. So if you have any questions on it, let me know. Okay, so I'm going to commit this. Added form array. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know. I'm here. Check the error which you're getting. See, it says email and password is required. So just check, are you sending the email address and password in the request? Can you do a screen share? I can't hear you.
Yes, Praveen. Now I'm able to unmute it. So I have the email password in this form control at the form group in the register form. The same register form I'm sending it to the register method. So when I go to HTML also, I have email for form control, email for, password for form control.
Okay, so if you see the name is not correct, it's not form control, it's form control name.
Okay. Okay. I'll try it now.
Okay, cool. Guys, anyone has any questions on this? Okay, so take 10 minutes, do this on your systems. Then I will show you some basic validations which we can do. And in the next session, we'll write our custom validations and go into more details of how validation messages and all are implemented. So I'll just give you a small intro into writing validations after 10 minutes. Try this out and then continue. And if you have any questions, do let me know. Hi Mandeep, what's the error you're getting? So Mandeep, can you do a screen share? Hello?
Am I audible?
Yeah.
I'm registering, clicking on this. There is nothing coming up.
Yeah. Okay. But your register call is getting sent now. So
But it
is the API server running?
I'm not sure. Can you check that?
Yeah. Go to your terminal.
Hmm.
So where did you start the dev server?
I just started this NG app, NG server. I'm not
Yeah.
sure
Okay.
whether I
So
have to
yeah, open a new
start.
terminal.
Okay.
Run npm run dev hyphen server. Npm space run space dev hyphen server hyphen. Yep. No, dev and server are combined, like dev hyphen server. Yeah. Yep. What happened? Scroll up. Okay. Go back to package.json file. Scroll down. Yeah. So this is your dev server, which is not starting. So you didn't install the JSON server auth package. So run the command npm run. Sorry, npm install. Sorry, npm install JSON hyphen server hyphen auth space. Okay, it's fine. And this. Okay, run the dev server command again. Npm run dev server. Now go to your browser and run the API, like run the register request. Yeah, no, it's working now. Now you see that sends the request over here. Scroll down somewhere in the user section, you will find this detail over here. Okay, so now the user is added. So when you're testing the API, like when you're running this code, do not stop the API. Okay, so I got another question. Let's do a screen share. So I got a question from Sheikh. The question is, sorry, where is the question now? Okay. So what is this code? So I got this question, what is this add new address which we are doing? Okay, so what I'm doing over here is when I was creating this model, when this model has address as an array, okay, it's a form array. Now, by default, I want to add one record in it, one empty record in it. So I'm using the create new address method, which creates one record and adds that to the array. So this is the array, and it creates a new record by running this code and adds it into the array. Okay. Now, when you call the add new address method, it points to the same form array. So what we do is we have the methods like on the form group. On the form group, there are methods which we can call. So all these methods we are going to discuss in the next session. We are using the get method over here. So on this, there are methods like register form dot get. So get method is for getting a control or a array or a form group. So anything which is on the form group, I want to get that. So I want to get the address from it. So what is the address? Address is a form array. So I'm just writing from the register form get the address array as a form array. So it changes its type to a form array so that the TypeScript code understands that what I am getting. Okay, now once I get that, so I know it's an array. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing a new item into it. So I'm adding a new item by calling the array.push. Array.push is a method in JavaScript. So if you want to add a new item into the array at the last, you call the array.push method and add the item which you want to add into it, like the new item which you want to add into it. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a new address object, a form group from this method, and I'm adding that to the array. So once this array gets incremented with a new value, it updates the HTML. So it goes to the HTML. Over here, there is a ng-for. So this ng-for gets executed, and it knows now there are 2 items or 3 items or n number of items, and iterates based on that. So it shows new items over here. Okay, so that's what we are doing. Okay, so next question is, why do we need add new address and get address? Both are doing the same thing. No, they are not doing the same thing. So you should see what's happening in add new address. So add new address is adding a new address to the array. Okay, so it's returning, it's not returning anything. So it's just adding a new item into the address array. So that's happening over here. If you see this method get address, what it does is it returns the array. So when it returns this array, it goes to a template, and I can write address dot controls, because controls is a property on an array which gives me all the controls in it. So they are both different. Okay, Poonam, what's your question? You are getting an error. Can you do a screen share, please?
Hello?
Yep.
Kevin, can you see my screen?
Yes.
So when I try to register the user, and the request is sending, but I'm getting 404, and also I see the these users in DB.json. I cannot see any users are added, so I'm not getting like.
Are you using the JSON server auth package?
Yes.
Can you check that in the packages file?
Yeah, I have just added.
Go to package.json file. Package.json. And yep, so over here you're not using that. See, you're not using the JSON server auth package. So I will send you what you have to change over here. You can check in the GitHub also. Otherwise, I'm just sending it. Okay, and you need to install the JSON server. So for that, you have to run the command npm install JSON server auth. So first run this command, the npm install command, then update the package JSON file with this snippet which I've sent you, and then restart the API server.
I guess I have already installed this. Again, I have to do this. This JSON.
Where did you install? So scroll down in the package JSON. Do you have that? Scroll down. Okay, you already installed the JSON server auth. Okay,
Yeah.
so use the snippet which I've sent you for dev server and
Yeah, I
replace.
added
Yeah. So now restart the server again. Control C. Yep. And you can press the up key. It will print the last command.
Okay.
Okay. Now try it again.
Do I have to refresh the page again, or I can just click register?
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
Still getting the same error. Okay. It should work. Checking the response for the red ones. What is the response you're getting?
In this one?
Yeah, so now you got the response. Check in the other one.
On this one?
Yeah, so see, there it prints an error over here.
Oh,
The
sorry.
email format is not correct.
But we have not added any validations yet, right?
Yeah. So this API has its server-side validations too.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have client-side validations, server-side validations. So this is client-side only or server-side only.
So still I'm getting the error, right? It's not returning any response.
No, click on the other one.
This one?
The next one, yeah. So see,
yeah.
you're getting the response. So okay, yeah, I will tell you one thing. What's happening is, I will share my screen and tell you what's the reason why you're
Just
getting two
one more
messages.
question I have before that. Here, whenever we add the terminal,
You're not sharing the screen. I actually took the control back.
Okay.
I will send you the request again. Yep.
Yeah, actually it's very basic question might be, but I just have this question. Like whenever we add the terminal, I can see like Node, PowerShell. So what is the difference? Because sometimes it's even if it's PowerShell, we are like adding any create component or something, it's doing the thing, right? And on your screen, I can see Node and something else, but not this one. So what is the difference in this?
It's okay. So the node means you're running the node exe in it.
Okay.
So when you see node, this JSON server internally uses Node.js, and it runs the node command with some internal command from it to run this code. So that's why you see node. The Angular CLI also uses Node.js to run the compiler and everything. So that's why you see the node command. The PowerShell, when you see over here, that means it's a new window and no command is right now executed. So it prints out which command which is running right now. So even if you go to the API one, do Control C, and it will again bring back to PowerShell. Yeah. So say yes.
Oh,
Bye.
okay. Yeah.
And it will come back to CMD. So PowerShell and CMD are two different things in Windows. So PowerShell allows you to run Linux-based commands also. CMD is your command prompt, which only runs Windows commands. So in PowerShell, you can have a combination of like ls command or rimref commands, which are coming from Linux, and those are both compatible with Linux and Windows commands. That's the main difference. On my system, because I'm using a Mac, so it doesn't have PowerShell, it has a ZSH, which is a different command line.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so
Thank
I will
you.
take the control. Welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other questions, guys? Okay, so I'll just recap what we did is we learned about forms. There are two types of forms in Angular. The first form which we learned is our template driven form, or we call it as a forms module. That is implemented in our pages, or sorry, in screens login page over here. Okay, so the login page is our template form where we have to define the ng for the form which we are building. We define a template variable for it also. We define all the controls which we need by using the ng model. So that's the main difference. We have to write name, the template variable for it, and ng model for it. So that creates our one single form control. Okay, then also for this one and also for this one. Now when I submit this, I have a button over here. So this is a submit button. So always remember. Okay, so we have a submit button. If you're creating a form, don't create it as a normal button. Sometimes the editor will create it as a button only, but make sure it is a type of a submit. So when you submit this, it will call the ng submit method of the form. So it will call the login method. Now in the login method, you have to make your API call. So we do not use the native approach of submitting data from your browser. We use XHR request or a HTTP request, which is done through the HTTP client. So we send the request to the service. The service will call that HTTP method and submit the data to it. So you have to pass in the URL and what data you want to send. Ideally, you will send the form data. You can also make changes into it, like once you receive the form information, if you want to remove some properties or if you want to add some additional properties to it, whatever you want to make changes and send to the server, you will add at the second parameter of the post request that will be sent. Now that's your template driven form. Reactive form is implemented in the register page. So in this, the main difference is in a template driven form, we just write form and start assigning properties to it, and most of the logic of what type of value is it and all those things are implemented in the template, all the validation rules and all. But in a reactive form, the model is implemented inside your TS code. Over here you will say, first of all, I want to create a group of controls. So a group means an object. It can have one control, it can have multiple controls in it. You'll say I want to create a group of controls. You define what controls you need. So I need 4 controls in it. Then I need an array of addresses. So why I created it as an array of addresses? Because I want a form where the user can provide their multiple addresses. So I can store multiple addresses of the user in one single go. This is a very common thing when you are filling out bank forms, or when you are buying products on shopping sites. They may ask you to save your credit cards. So if you want to save your credit cards or your debit cards on some shopping site, they may ask you like, okay, what credit cards you have, and we'll take all of them and directly store into a system. All right. Or if you are booking a ticket on IRCTC, like Indian Railways booking platform, they have a form where they will ask you the passenger names. Okay, so you will have like, on that IRCTC site, the booking site, there is a limit of 6 items to be added. So when you click on add a new passenger, it adds a new row. So the same thing is implemented over here. So when you click on the button, it adds a new section for the address. You can just customize it to fill in credit card information. You can fill it for address information, fill it for passengers information, whatever you like to customize to. Okay, so you have addresses, you can change it to passengers, you can change it to credit cards, whatever you like. Now, when you have this kind of array, you always need one default value in it, because that's you need to show at least one record to the user to tell them that, okay, you have to fill the items. So you create it as an array and you add one default empty record in it. So in my case, I'm adding a default empty record by calling the create new address. Okay, so create a new address returns a form group. So why I added a form group over here? Because my address has city and the pin code. But in your case, if you have a single control, like you just want to capture the name of the person or the city of the person, then you can only create one control in it also. But better would be create a form group and add all the controls in it. So that's been returned from here. Now the normal flow, you have to add the register method that will send the data to the API, store the record in the API. Then you have the add new address method. So this will be called when you click on the button. So like when you have a button on the screen which says add new address. When you click on it, this method gets called. So what it does is it gets the array, that what array you have on your screen, and allows you to push a new item into it. So array.push is a JavaScript method, so which is used for adding a single record into the array. So at the last of the array, it will add a new record, and you will say how to get that new record. So we already have a helper method which is going to create a new record and provide us. So we'll call that over here, and that gets added into the array. So once that is added into the array, the template will loop on the array again and show you the new record which you have, and the user can fill in their information in the template and see the results. To submit the data, we will just call the register. Register will call the register, get the properties from the register form. Register form has a property called as value. That's the whole data which has been filled in the form. So that will be received over here as a form of a register form data. And we can make an API call and subscribe to the API to see if the response is being received. If there is an error, you can catch that error and show some error message to the user. If it is successful, you can navigate the user. So you can write like a navigation logic also here. So you can say private router service, and say once the user is successful, you can write this dot router dot navigate by URL. Once the user is registered, you can force the user to go to the login screen, and now the user has to log in and continue with the application. So this is something which you have to decide what is your flow of the application. So one thing which we haven't covered is how to implement validations, how to create custom validations also, and that is the part of the content which we have in the next week. So we have a module in which we are going to cover all the validation rules. That's the next module. Validating Angular forms, in which we are going to create custom validations, use the native validations which are in the system. Then we have JSON Web Tokens. So JSON Web Tokens, in the today's session, the response which we got from the API has a token in it. Now we have to store that token to authenticate the user, that who is this person, and we have to send that with every request to the system. So in the next week, we are going to use auth guards, which we implemented in the yesterday session, the router guards. We are also going to use a HTTP interceptor to handle this JSON Web Token and send it to the server for validation. Okay, so I'm kind of done with the content for today. We are already 5 minutes up. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we can wrap up the session for today. You can complete the assignments. So the topics in which we have covered you will be able to complete the assignments based on this. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. So one thing you should, if you have time in the week, what you can do is you can read about JSON Web Tokens. So it's a very small read. Just search for JSON Web Tokens, see what they are, and yeah. So just look into it. What is the JSON Web Token? How they work, and we'll see how they're implemented in our application in the next session. All right, so we are done with the content. Just waiting here for another 2 minutes. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will wrap up the session for today. And guys, thank you for joining in. Let's meet in the next week.